Well, a happy Friday to everybody out there as we have the big news of the day where you sign a contract and you remain in the spot for life. Maybe. We'll see. It should, because that's what it looks like with the 3-year extension for Joel Embiid as he is locked in 3 years, $93 million on the extension. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Podcast with Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna with us here. He's awake. I'm tired. And we have a lot to talk about during this show with Joel Embiid. Not just, of course, that we did the emergency podcast earlier this morning with Derek and I, and we talked through it for about 20 minutes. But we have a lot more to discuss. Of course, we got 20 minutes in there. We fit a lot in that 20 minutes, but there's so much more to add to the conversation of what this means for Joel Embiid, for the 76ers as they move forward, especially now as they put this roster together in their quest for a championship. So we'll get through all of that here today. We'll get all of your comments. I see Ash Monroe in there. We haven't seen Ash in there in a while. And he says, fam, it's been a while. Good to see you, Ash. Good to see everybody in there. And really want to hear what everybody in the chat who did not get a chance to jump in earlier, your thoughts on the extension. And certainly, since Kyle has talked about that he was not awake, your thoughts on this as you are also getting something prepared for allphly.com.
Yes.
As a diehard member, you'll be able to read that later. But Derek wanted to say something first, and then, of course, your thoughts on this.
Well, I just want to say I'm glad that Kyle owned up to being asleep during our show earlier, because I was giving you grief for it in the middle of the live stream, so I don't have to feel guilty about
Yeah, well, you know, some
jokes.
people give people grief for sleeping. Other people give people grief for grieving and missing shows. So, you know, there's...
I didn't know you were grieving.
I
didn't know you were grieving, and I apologized about that.
I know. Yeah, I mean, listen, basically every major Sixers thing that ever happens is when I'm asleep or in the shower. So
But they all happen.
this was my act of community service to the Sixers community, to this show. They traded for Jimmy Butler when I was laying down to take a nap. They traded for Tobias Harris in the middle of the night. Paul George, I was awake for, but it was at 3 o'clock in the morning. So invariably, if something big is happening, it's at a time that's most inconvenient for me and for all of us. And that's why I was so happy for our pal Adrian Wojnarowski being able to use Do Not Disturb on his phone more often moving forward. So
how about him missing this one?
I was going to say, there was a real part of me that wondered whether or not he would tweet.
He would tweet no, look, hey, I respect he's out the game. He's go Bonnies and go Bonnies only moving forward.
But we did say, how much would he get one and say, let me get this one out before Shams does, or Shams does, and he resisted. He did not do it. All right, but your thoughts, man.
Well, so here we are. We have talked not at length about a potential extension. We've alluded to it throughout the summer that it was one of the big looming.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not even will they, but when they, and will Joel agree to it? Kind of where is his head at, sort of thing. And I think it's certainly a risk. Right. I think mainly because the history of the injuries, but also what we saw in the middle of this summer, which was, we talked about it a lot on the show, and a lot of chatters, a lot of our listeners, readers are concerned about, will all these injuries that Joel has suffered take a toll at some point and take him from where he's been at, which is top 5, top 3, maybe even the best player in the league, to someone who's very good, but not good enough, not healthy enough, not available enough to be that top guy on a contender. But I think they passed the point probably a couple of years ago where reasonably they could have been like, we're getting out of the Joel Embiid business, right? This was a foregone conclusion to some degree, because his trade value, if they had ever wanted to trade him, is not what it would have been if you moved him when he's 27 or whatever, prior to a couple more injuries suffered. But most importantly, I think this is great because so few players in any sport, in any city, get the opportunity to go beginning to end in one place, especially in the NBA, where it's turned into guys signing contracts, forcing their way elsewhere. End of last summer, we're having conversations about, hey, look, Joel's at it's like a movie screen or a movie production screening, whatever that was, where he's talking to Maverick Carter and some other people. And he's alluding to, like, I'm going to go wherever I think I need to go to win a title, right? Like, that's kind of what guides him in his life. And he's always been clear he wants to play and stay in Philadelphia, but do all those goals align? And I think the most important thing that happened between then and now is seeing Tyrese Maxey take yet another step forward, right? Like, it was having Tyrese as he's the young ascending guy is nice when you have James Harden or a player like that. But once James Harden is out the door and once it's you and a bunch of role players and Tyrese, that's kind of the rubber meets the road moment, right? And so Tyrese stepping forward and being a 26 point per game scorer, a capable sidekick, and most importantly, a guy that Joel trusts on and off the floor was a transformational thing. I'm not saying that Joel wouldn't have signed an extension if Tyrese was like as good as he was the year before, right? Like a 20 point per game guy, but maybe not as much of a playmaker, maybe not as much of a crunch time lead option. But I think that certainly has helped Joel get to the point where all these other things happen. And from the Sixers' perspective, they are taking the view, and I think it's the right one, he sets everything up for this organization, right? Without Joel, Tyrese Maxey's ascent doesn't really matter as much, right? Because we saw that last season. With Joel, they are a top of the East type contender. Without him, with Tyrese leading the way and a bunch of role players, they're kind of just lost in the wilderness. They slide down into the play-in territory, and they need Joel to come in at the end of the year to create a 1-2 punch. And so for the next 4 years, they have one of the game's 5 best players, all the health question marks and caveats taken into consideration. One of the 5 best players in the league. They have an ascending star who fits next to him, high character, high work ethic, high skill player that complements him well. And they have an aging but very well fitting, ultra productive 2-way wing to go next to him. I'm not saying they're the best setup team in the league. That's right now it's the Boston Celtics, even with all the, second apron, all the other stuff. But they're as well positioned as you could realistically hope they could be right now and in the next few years to try to go win a title. And from an organizational standpoint, that really is all that matters, right? Like, you have to set it up on paper for success. You don't know how it's going to play out. You don't know if Joel is going to be healthy, but they have given themselves as good of an opportunity as anyone could expect to try to win in the next 2 years, but over the next 3 to 4 years. And then if it's all over after that, it's all over. But to me, this is a thing that you have to do at this stage of your franchise. And I'm happy for Joel that it looks like, we'll see what happens by the end of this deal, but it looks like he may be able to live out this, one team forever. Your legacy will be cemented in Philadelphia in one way or another. And he's going to go down as one of the all-time Sixers greats, basically, no matter what happens from here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, so I sort of laid out some of the contract details on an article today at allphly.com. Go check that out. But really, it's being billed as a 3-year extension. In reality, it's 2 years in addition to what was already there. The reason it's a 3-year extension is basically, if you're going to offer an extension, you can't have a player option on the end. So that one player option in 2026-27, it's converted to a guarantee, and then there's a player option on the end. So it's 2 additional years. And when you commit $200+ million to Paul George, when you commit a max salary to Tyrese Maxey, you're going to make sure that Joel Embiid is on the roster for all 4 of those years. Like, you've got those 2 players lined up and under contract for 4 more years. You had Joel Embiid there for only 3. They were always going to find a way to extend him. And I know there's some people who are going to question, how productive he will be at 33, 34, 35. There are certainly reasons to be concerned. He's a 7'2", 280-pound human being who has a lower body injury every year. We all get it. He's still one of the 5 best players in the world, and he still fits your other 2 tentpole stars almost perfectly. He has to be here for the duration of the run, and you run through it. You see what you can get out of this. I agree with Kyle. I think they are pretty well set up. This is really only maybe the second time in Joel Embiid's career where you look at it and he's got a running mate with any kind of a runway. The first time happened to be with a point guard who couldn't and wouldn't shoot, so it was fundamentally flawed from the get-go, but you hoped he would grow. It didn't. But ever since then, they've been chasing. They chased, Jimmy Butler for half a season. That didn't work out for reasons we don't need to get into. They chased James Harden. That didn't work out, really of no fault of Joel Embiid's. And all of a sudden, Tyrese Maxey develops into what he did. And now you have a chance to see Embiid form real chemistry with his two co-stars. How high can that get them? Some of these, playoff struggles, can familiarity and well-fitting teammates help you overcome that? None of us can sit here and know the answer to that for sure. They're set up pretty well to test against that hypothesis. And when you committed this much time to Joel Embiid and the era, and he's developed into what he has, you just have to give him all the resources in the world to see whether or not they can get through to that next level. I think it was a move that they had to make. That doesn't mean that there's no concern with the contract. Obviously, when you're talking about giving a guy $65 to $70 million per year and 33 to 35% of your salary cap, there's going to be risk, but it is a risk you had to take.
And adding on the Tyrese Maxey piece, and we talked about it earlier, Kyle brings it up now, that it's so important that worked out, that panned out after mentioning Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons, James Harden and all. For him to be the young guy that he is, being able to play both guard positions, being able to handle the pressure, and also just having the personality that we all talk about. We all talk about how much we love the person, not just the player, the person that goes along with the player that makes him overall who he is and what he means to this organization. That makes it so much easier for what they do and for Joel Embiid to succeed the way that he does along with him. And that's something that we'll get into in just a little bit as we expand on this conversation a little bit more about how much he fits in this. But for that to hit and for that to work and getting him at that 21st pick in that COVID year of the NBA draft, and for it to pan out the way that it has been able to turn him into this all-star, all-NBA caliber player where we're looking at him as one of the budding stars in the NBA, to go along with the trajectory that these guys have spoken about already, to fit so perfectly with him. And we didn't know that, because if we all remember, and we talked about it briefly, coming out of Kentucky, well, we're looking at Jared McCain. Okay, he's got the shooting ability, but he doesn't have the speed. Tyrese Maxey had the speed, but not necessarily the shooting ability, because we were unable to see it at the collegiate level. For him to then grow and continue to get better year after year, and then turn himself into one of the better shooting guards, not a shooting guard in position, but shooting guards in the NBA, that has helped them dramatically for how they can also build around the rest of the way because of his shooting ability at that spot where you can go and get that wing that does also shoot, but maybe cannot do some other things. And then you can add the Kelly Oubre and the Caleb Martin, because guess what? Tyrese Maxey can shoot the basketball, and then Joel Embiid trusts him. And all of that just simply goes in line as you check things off for him to get that 1% better every year and become the player that he is. That cannot be overstated, from Kyle, from Derek, from you, from Bree, everybody talking about how important this extension is because of who he has become and how important he is to this organization going forward. And certainly as Joel Embiid continues to go in the Sixers uniform with him as his sidekick right there. That guy is damn good, Tyrese Maxey. And it's a big piece of why Joel Embiid, of course you take it because the money is $63 million at the end, but you also look at it and say,
Joel, you want to help with my mortgage, by the way?
Right. Who are you going to be with during that time? You do that for that reason, because that guy has panned out to what he is.
Well, and I'm going to give you another reason why I think an extension for this player at this time is really important. I think if you look at the NBA landscape, right, the Sixers are a historical organization for a lot of reasons, been in a lot of, they've had iconic teams, iconic players, all of that.
Playing the best city in the world.
Well, I mean, that goes without saying. But when you look at, so the teams that are always going to be able to attract free agents and, by extension, great players, very short list, right? Like the Lakers are one of them. Some of that is they've always won, but a lot of that is LA is very attractive to guys in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Miami is one of those teams. They have the market, they have the culture, they have the success. You have to ask yourself, all right, how does Philadelphia create a sustainably great organization. And to put it simply, it's having great players around that you command other great players to join them in a like greatness begets greatness type of thing, right? So like when you move Charles Barkley in 1992, you don't have an opportunity to get another high-level player for another 4 years. You draft Allen Iverson in 1996, and it takes you another 5 years to then get to the peak of that era. That's 9 years between losing Barkley and going on that finals run.
Also, 95, getting Jerry Stackhouse, and that not necessarily working out the way.
I'm going to pull a Winona here. It is too soon to talk about that calamity of errors. Can't.
But so
happy Friday. 9
years between losing Barkley, getting to the finals, and then that's the high mark of that whole era. You trade Iverson in, it was 05 or 06. I think it was 05.
Okay.
One way or another. You move Iverson in that time period. You don't get another player like that for another 8 years, and he doesn't play for another decade until after Iverson left. And that power vacuum, that dearth of a great player to draw other great players, to give the organization stability as, you know, look, they were a competitive team, right, with Iguodala and some of these other guys, but they're always picking in the mid lottery. They never had an abundance of cap space except for when they're signing Elton Brand post Achilles tear. And like, you're never getting that premier class of players. And so having Joel to set that floor of, you're going to win 50 games if he's healthy. You're going to have a puncher's chance against these really good teams. Like, as much as it hurt to watch them choke in Game 7 to not win that Game 6 against Boston, they are there and they have a chance in that series because of him. And then Tyrese Maxey is able to come in and develop where he doesn't have to right away be a star, right? Like, he could come in, be a sixth man, be a bench player, rise to a starting player, be James Harden's sidekick, and make that natural progression rather than being thrown into the mixer and say, you either survive or die immediately. And that can, even with his work ethic, even with his character, things can go completely awry. And so Joel is the guy who makes it possible for Tyrese Maxey to develop, and then makes it possible for Paul George to want to come to Philadelphia, that Paul George can have in his head, not only am I getting money, which he could have gotten in a few places, I'm getting a real chance to go out and do the thing I haven't been able to do, which is to win a title. And so you keep stacking up these 50-win seasons, you keep getting closer and closer, you will have more guys who look at the Sixers as, this is somewhere I want to be. I mean, Kelly Oubre, I think people scoffed at it last year. We was like, this is a winning organization. Like, that's what they have been building as Joel Embiid has been there. Guys who are coming from the Charlottes, the Detroits, these other also-rans, they look at this as a place that wants to win and compete at a high level. And that is why it is so important to keep a guy like Joel Embiid, to make him feel like he is this organization, because you need that reputation to continue growing so that as players, future generations of players come into the league, become free agents, this is somewhere that they want to be. That has not historically been the case, but when they've gotten great players, it's when you have Julius Erving and Moses Malone says, yeah, I'd like to be traded there. I want to be with that type of guy. That's how Philadelphia becomes, I think, the team that, frankly, the organization believes they are, which is this important historical organization. And that's a big reason why I think you have to make a deal like this.
Yeah, I mean, look, do you think I would have came to PHLY if I was sitting next to, we don't need to name names, but teammates matter. And I'm very happy to be sitting next to you too. And that's the same on the court as well.
No, I was going to say that earlier because I think it was Darkness said it in there about me being the star player. No, I'm just transparency, right? You guys have said it before anyway. We were like, well, who are we going to be working with? It's a similar thing where who are we going to be working with? And while it may not be the same level, we want to be successful at our work too. So who are we going to be paired with? Who are we going to be teamed up with to try to make this thing successful? And that's exactly, you're exactly right, Darkness. That's how we came about and how we looked at things.
Don't sell yourself short, Devon. It is the same level.
Fair enough. I'll take it. But guess what? You don't win in September. You got to win in the summer, early summer, late spring, whatever you want to call it there. And the 76ers have a lot of work to do. And with that, the signing is fantastic for Joel Embiid and the Sixers for everything that we've just laid out. There's more work to do. What does that mean? What's next for this basketball team? We know it's the championship. What's next to get to the championship? We'll break all of that down right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
First up, I have to tell you about Rite Aid and what they can do about your fall allergies. Fall allergies can begin as early as August and last into November. The main culprits are ragweed and mold, with other possible allergens including plants and dust mites. Then pet dander and fur contribute as well. Allergic reactions occur when your body misidentifies a substance such as pollen as harmful to the body, and then your immune system releases histamines to fight off the allergens. These same histamines are also the cause of your allergy symptoms, such as a runny nose, itchy or watery eyes, or wheezing. That's why antihistamines, medication that suppress the amount of histamine in your body, are often the first line of defense to treating your allergy symptoms. Here's what you can do to get relief during allergy season. Sign up for Rite Aid Rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards to receive email pollen alerts for your area. Use a dehumidifier. Shower frequently, especially at night after you've been out all day and before you go to bed. Check pollen counts on your weather app of choice and keep windows closed and use an air conditioner. And then here are some over-the-counter options available at your local Rite Aid to help. First, there is a nasal rinse to help flush out your nasal passages. When symptoms flare up, you can try the antihistamines we talked about earlier. And then in order to be proactive, 1 to 2 weeks before pollen allergies are expected to be high, try a nasal corticosteroid. If that's still not enough relief, you can always ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for recommendations on ways to get relief during allergy seasons.
Well, everyone, I woke up this morning to a flurry of texts, missed calls, tweet alerts, DMs, all sorts of things. And I was feeling pretty good, pretty okay, right? Like I saw my teammates covered for me. But I know there are people out there like our guy Vince, one of the important people in this company, who are not so happy about the news this morning, who is not a Joel Embiid super fan. Well, Vince, and while everybody else out there who's a little more concerned about this than we are, there's always a better way. There's a chiller way. When you're worked up about the Sixers, big contract extensions, or anyone else, you can always choose chill and then enjoy a nice ice cold Coors Light. And you know, as I always tell you with Coors Light, that you're getting that ice cold beer when the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans right as they hit that perfect temperature. So if you're heading into this weekend thinking, man, I wish the Sixers would have spent that $200 million on someone else, maybe you should just walk into the weekend, choosing chill and thinking, hey, let's hope for the best, right? Maybe this is the year that Joel Embiid stays healthy. Maybe this is the year, as we'll probably talk about in a little bit, that he skips more back-to-backs, that they manage his minutes a little bit more cautiously, a little bit better than they have in the past. They get to the playoffs, and he's ready to go, and now they make the run at the title. And once you get into that chill mindset, I want you to reach for some mountain cold refreshment, cold layered, cold filtered, and cold package for a smooth finish. When you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light, get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado.
I will say, I think I've heard a little less objection to the extension than I was expecting. Now, it so happens that one of the people who strenuously objects happens to have our phone numbers and has been blowing it up a little bit. But I do think, and I haven't gone and scoured Twitter or listened to a whole bunch of radio. I just haven't had a chance to check in everywhere. But I do think there's been a little more. It might just be that there's so many good vibes with the team right now. People believe in the team maybe more than they did in prior years. But there's been less objection to it than I was expecting.
That'll be delayed.
Yeah.
That'll be if
let him have one bad game where he has 7 turnovers.
They lose to Boston by 15, and all of a sudden it's, I can't believe they gave this fatso $200 million. And look, that's
Bree, just clip that part and no other context. That's going to be a clip we use.
But that's the business that they and we are in, right? It's like when it's the off season. Oh my God, Howie Roseman won the off season again. We're in week 2 for the Eagles,
Bryce
and
Huff,
it's
baby.
like Bryce Huff, go to Alcatraz. Not just you haven't been good enough. Man? You should be in a maximum security prison, sir. Get out. So I I understand we're on the roller coaster. It's the ups and downs. And I think recently, in part because of the Eagles, quite frankly, you start to see these videos and things leaking out from the Sixers practice facility. Hey, all the guys are in the gym. These guys are
good.
Working out together. You see Paul George, you see Joel, you see Tyrese, you see Arthur Embiid today running around the practice facility, getting pulled up to dunk by his dad, and seeing all this, the feel good. It's a new season, new year, new vibe. So everybody's excited right now. But yes, there is the reality of once the ball tips off, once we start to see this team on the floor, then we all have to confront what are their real flaws, all the, the rebounding, the playmaking, all the things that we've talked about over and over. So I guess now that this is done and the header of the show is, kind of what comes next, what is this like next immediate thing that comes to mind of like, whether it's a big question, a big move, a sort of follow-up to something that we've all assumed was going to happen for a while. Where do you go on that?
So can I start with first start with the super chat of Ash?
Yeah.
And Ash.
You can start wherever you want, buddy. You're a superstar. You get to make the rules.
No, don't do that, man. Ash says, this is, the super chats for being one all summer. Let's do it this year, folks. And he donates the $9.99, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Ash. Good to see you, buddy.
But I go to the comment he makes in the chat, and he says, I just wanted to see them do something different with JoJo. From a load management standpoint, they can't keep doing the same things and expecting a different result in regards to his health. And that's where I would begin, because we all know, look, if this guy plays, if he's healthy enough for 82 and he plays 75 or plays 72 because they just want to give him some nights off on the back-to-back and it just works out, this is the healthiest season of Joel Embiid, and it goes into the playoffs and he does that, we're probably talking about a much deeper run than we've ever seen from him in a Sixers uniform. So we start there because it's something that we've discussed so much. I know you guys have mentioned it so many times about the load management part, whether it be the back-to-backs or just simply looking at a day when they're playing against a team on a Tuesday, and we always use the Charlotte Hornets or the Detroit Pistons or something like that.
I always go to Charlotte first.
I know,
because
that's the Tuesday games, man. And you go there and you just take the day off.
They play them like 3 times in 2 weeks, right. And it's like, oh my God, get these bozos off my screen already.
Right. And you do that, but Ash is right. You guys are right. We want to see him healthy. Derek, you said it in the playoffs when we were getting ready for the postseason. Can we just see one healthy postseason of this guy where you give them a real opportunity to go ahead and win? And even when he lost in some of the others, he was banged up, but he was healthy enough to play. They almost got close. They were right there. It's still not enough, and we all want to see it and see how it happens. So start there. What does it look like of load management? No back-to-backs maybe, but again, what does that look like, Derek, for them to try to implement something like that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is, because Ash said they keep trying the same thing, they were pretty proactive of not letting him play back-to-backs earlier on in his career. They did try to keep him out a decent chunk of games, as just sitting him early in his career. He pushed back against that. He felt like he plays better when he gets in a flow, but he was injured back then too. Like, he's just had so many fluke injuries where it's not so much repetitive stress, it's landing on it, it's getting fingers. We don't need to go through all of them, but there's been so many different ways that load management isn't anywhere near a guarantee that he's going to be healthy. I'm not even sure it's going to boost the odds all that much. Where I really come down on load management is I want to see him fresh in the playoffs, especially noting that if things go right, it could be a deeper run than normal. I don't want him to look like he's gassed at the end. It's as much that as it is about health, because health just seems so random with him and so much bad luck with him. There is almost nothing you can do to make me feel confident in May and June. But I think load management helps, to the degree of which, who knows? But I also think it helps keep him fresh when he needs to be fresh, because nothing matters if Joel Embiid doesn't look like the dominant MVP caliber player in the playoffs.
So to build off of that, Derek, I think the critical thing here is that not playing back-to-backs or not playing 3 and 4 nights, whatever, wherever you want to draw the line.
18 and 30.
That I'd love to. That's gonna be burned in my brain forever. Now I did not even realize
24
it was a
and
thing.
42.
Yeah. The critical thing is that you're managing those games, but also that he is maniacal about what he is doing off the floor and out of the spotlight while that is happening, right? Because if the product of him sitting back-to-backs and not playing 3 games in 4 nights, for example, would be him doing nothing at all, I don't think you're gaining from that. In fact, I think it actually is worse. We've seen throughout his career, he's even said, like, as you alluded to, Derek, I'm better when I'm in a rhythm. I get into game shape by playing in games. And I understand game shape and just like conditioning are 2 different things. But if he plays on a Tuesday and he's given off on a Wednesday,
he should not be out of shape by Friday.
Wednesday should be if you're in the weight room, if you're in the swimming pool, if you're on an elliptical, like whatever the program needs to be. And I'm not saying he hasn't done this in the past, but it needs to be a level of commitment on that day that meets whatever standard you need to come back on Friday or Saturday or whenever the next game is and look like you have been in a game rhythm and at game level conditioning the whole time. So that would be one of my main challenges, both to him and the people around him. To me, and I hate that we have to bring this team up because they are such a sore point for Sixers fans, the blueprint for managing him and for this team is the 2019 Raptors, right? Like Kawhi Leonard played 60 games that year, and it wasn't like they were very selective with managing the amount of games that he played. If there was anything that felt a little bit off, coming off of that situation in San Antonio where Kawhi voiced that he felt like he wasn't being listened to by the San Antonio medical staff and the people there, they sat him, right? Like they said, the regular season, we will play hard. You will play hard when you're on the floor, but we will be very deliberate about you're not playing tonight. We're not taking any chances with the tendiopathy he's dealing with and all the other things. That has to be what they do with Joel Embiid. Because as we all know, number one, he doesn't hide his pain and his injuries. Like we all know when he's hurt and he's out there, he wears it on his face. They all know better than we do, working with him up close, when he is going to be the Joel Embiid we know at an MVP level and when he is compromised and shouldn't be out there. Both parties, the Sixers and certainly Joel, who's the one feeling all these things, have to know where that red line is and protect his knees, lower extremities, his whole body as much as they can so that when they get to April, May, and June, this guy is ready to just go completely tear up the league. That's been the challenge the whole time. I understand that's a lot easier said than done, as Derek said. A lot of randomness, freak injuries. Like you could, even if Joel was not gimpy or whatever coming into that game, Jonathan Kuminga falling on his knee is not something that's saved because he didn't play in back-to-backs, right? That's something that you can't avoid. But they have to go out of their way, and from the very first game until game 82 of the regular season, it has to permeate through absolutely everything that they do.
That's being a leader. That's being a franchise player. That's doing everything in your power. That's under your control what happens on those off days. If they say take it easy, but you can go and you can lift, and if they want you to do certain things diet-wise to make sure that you bring maybe the weight down. Because, look, at this point, you're still bigger than so many of these guys in the league, and your skill level is so good that you don't need all of that weight, quite frankly, to be as dominant and with the way that you play against your opponent. So if he's able to do that, then you add into, and I'm going to say this for me, because we've all seen Joel Embiid, and I've been pissed at him enough where I don't go as far as people who don't like him. I like the guy because I think he's very good and he should surpass certain things already. He has to be smarter on the floor too. When he is out there on the floor, to not put himself in certain, he can't control the broken finger, the elbow to the face. And I did even defended Brett Brown on that because, it was fine that he was in the game because they were getting ready to get out of the game at that point when he caught the elbow from Pascal Siakam. So some of those things he cannot control. But what he can control is, all right, it's a smart play to throw the ball off the backboard to yourself and go finish a dunk. but it's not a smart play to throw the ball at the backboard to finish a dunk after you've given up your dribble when you're already dealing with a bad knee. Pass the ball. Try to reset something else. Get the ball back so you can have a much better opportunity. Maybe you get to the free throw line. Maybe you get the ball back and you bring back the live dribble and have an opportunity to score instead of doing that. And then you go up and you buckle your knee, and now your knee is wrapped up, and we're all concerned for the remainder of the playoffs. That's just being smarter. It's a smart IQ basketball
Discretion
play.
is what we're hoping for.
Right, but it's not a smart thing overall because you're already nursing something that could be really, really detrimental to the team if you cannot play because you just buckled your knee.
Mm-hmm.
You might think you're going to be able to get through it if I make this play, but it's unclear of how you're going to land after doing something like that, so he has to be smarter. And then number 2, for all that we've talked about the Olympics, and I'm sure we'll get to it, with those things, they played a lot of games where it was back-to-back, 18 in 30 days. And how did he see LeBron James working on those off days?
Like a maniac.
How did he see Kevin Durant trying to get back from that, what was that, a calf injury, trying to get out there? The same thing for Steph Curry, even at a different weight, different height, but the maniacal way of being active, staying that way for you to be ready to get out there on the floor for that very next game, because you know what? They're going to need you, and we're going to need you badly in this spot. If we lose, we're out. Well, that's the same way for the regular season and most certainly for the postseason to gear up and get ready. So how much does he take away, not just the stuff we saw on the floor, but behind the scenes, seeing how those players work, those winners, those MVPs, those fellow Hall of Famers that have the stuff that he does not have and that he wants. How does he now implement that and to bring that to Philadelphia, not just for his teammates, for himself, for everything that Kyle said of what are you doing off the floor to make sure that you're 100% ready and ready to go on that off day to be prepared for that next game on that Tuesday. That's not the Charlotte Hornets. Instead, it is the Milwaukee Bucks.
And look, you've got to listen to this guy. He is the load management king. He took 3 months off to make sure that he was good to go for this show.
I was able to still rehabilitate my Achilles, and I worked very hard.
That's true.
I did work very hard.
And to that point, you're making Devon, like you mentioned, for himself and for the team. Joel also brings up all the time, and I mentioned that his son was with him at the practice facility. Joel talks a lot about leaving a legacy for Arthur. Like, I want to be someone that he's proud of, and like I did everything that within my power to accomplish this and win this and get this award and win a title. And like, really at this point, there is no way for Joel Embiid's legacy to advance without winning, right? He is already viewed as one of the best and most talented players in the game. He's put up the stats. He's won an MVP. Guys who were like, hey, they should build around Ben Simmons instead of him, left and immediately floundered, right? Like, he has done everything you could do to prove I'm a great individual player. I can produce regular season results. I've been the plus minus king in the playoffs. He just had a 50-point game in the playoffs. Like, you can put up stats and you can do all these things, but nobody will put you in a higher tier when it all is said and done of like Joel Embiid versus, I saw this was being argued at some point over the last few days. It was like Joel Embiid versus David Robinson versus Patrick Ewing, like some of these other bigs that are below the title winners, like the Hakeems, the Shaqs, the Duncans. And for Joel to progress past those guys, he has to win. That is the only way, whether it's locally in Philadelphia, whether it's the historic stuff nationally around the world, the way people talk about him, or if it's just for going to your son, going to your family, going to your loved ones, that last final hurdle is winning. And I know it's easy to get wrapped up in like, of course Joel cares about the stats. Like, Joel pays so close attention to the league. He knows what every great player is doing. He knows who he's being compared to. And so the stats mean something to him in that regard. But I truly believe him when he says things like, the championship is what really matters. Like, the title is what really matters. Because if it wasn't, when it got to the playoffs and he's playing through injuries, he would just sit, right? He knows what his reputation is. He knows when he plays hurt and doesn't play well, the type of criticism he's going to get. But you can look at great players, including guys in other sports, like one that always leaps out to me. Remember LaDainian Tomlinson, how great he was as a running back?
Yep.
There were multiple times in playoff games where he had some kind of knock and was just like, I can't go, and I'm not going to go, and I'm not going to put myself at risk. Joel is a contrast to that. Joel's putting himself out there and doing his best. So I believe him when he says he wants to win. But do you want to win at a level, at the same level as those guys you're talking about, the LeBrons, who his whole life to like the 99th percentile is all about trying to win and maximize your ability to. It's changing your diet. It's working out and sleeping in, air casts and cryo chambers and all this ridiculous stuff. How hard are you willing to push yourself every second of your life, every day, every week, every month? That is the challenge ahead of Joel Embiid. And we're going to see just how much he's willing to, where he's willing to go over these next 4 years to try to win a title. I would be thrilled for him, for the city, for the organization, if he can finally get over that hump, because it is the one thing standing between him and like true, like Hall of Fame. Like he's going to be in the Hall of Fame more than likely as it is. But between being in the Hall of Fame and you're one of the guys in the Hall of Fame, that's an important distinction.
Oh, he will definitely be in the Hall of Fame. It's the difference between being Dan Marino and one of the greats. Like Dan Marino doesn't come up in one of the greatest of all time in discussions for a long. And
he changed the game. Like he's MVP a foundational player of the 80s and the early 90s.
MVP winner. I think he led the league in passing yards like 7 out of 8 years or something like that. He's just not in these conversations because it didn't translate.
You don't want to be one of the best guy to never win a title, right? No. It's better to be, if you're at the low end of guys who are greats that won a title, that's better than being.
Look at that TNT show. Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley, and Kenny Smith were Ernie Johnson, but Kenny Smith and Shaq specifically likes to make fun of Charles Barkley because he does not have that title. While he's one of the greatest players of all time, he's a Hall of Famer, clearly. And Kenny Smith is not a Hall of Famer, but guess what? He's got 2 titles, and he's got one above.
It does drive me crazy. At least with Shaq, it's like I go back to I love Chuck on the bus driver stuff with Kevin Durant. I know you're a KD guy, so we don't have to go too far down.
It's funny.
Chuck can take it from Shaq, right? Because Shaq is a all-time inner circle great. Kenny Smith being like, "Oh, you never won a ring." Like, all right, Kenny, you had a good career, but let's
settle down, buddy.
Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Settle down, buddy. Well, talking about him getting there, getting to that greatness, the extension itself and how much money it is. First, I want to tell you guys about our Die Hard program. Once again, allphly.com. Make sure you go sign up for it. To read the story that Derek put up earlier today, the Philadelphia 76ers signed Joel Embiid to a 3-year extension. Title, here's what it means. And the only way you can read that is by signing up and becoming a Die Hard member. And when you do that, you'll later on get a chance to read Kyle's story that he's putting together for this very thing. And again, what it means going forward. Actually, what?
This one is actually...
Derek dropped a freebie for everybody.
Oh, to see you get a preview.
But I
get a preview.
I did link to 3 other articles I wrote over this summer, which were detailing the collective bargaining agreement changes. And those are Die Hard only.
And I've got some Die Hard stuff coming. Don't worry.
You get a preview of what you have going for you on that Die Hard program. Podcast live shows every day on every team. Post-game shows, of course, for the Birds and the Phillies right now. Soon to come, the Flyers and the Sixers. Union also, maybe get into that. Premium writing content that we talked about for our members here at allphly.com. 20% off of the events, dope merchandise for all teams. Free shirt when you do become a member. Members only Discord at the PHLY Lounge. Sure, that was very active. I wasn't there. No surprise. But I wasn't there to find out everything that was going on in the Discord today. But, hey, man, you sign up. You tell me you sign up. I might just jump in there and have a conversation with you on the Discord. I'm just saying. I don't know, but go sign
promises,
up
but he might.
To become a Die Hard member here with us at PHLY. Also, don't forget, we stream every day on Roku. We're here live and direct on your television screen on Roku. Search PHLY for the Roku channel for our PHLY Roku channel, and you'll have all of the shows there live, and it goes throughout the day.
Look at that.
Of our shows on Roku. All right, Derek, your first thought of what's next for this basketball team and for Joel Embiid specifically with this extension?
Well, in terms of roster, there's really nothing left because nothing's really going to happen until February. Where my head is at, I want to see how quickly Embiid can develop some chemistry with Paul George, because this is, it is tough. It's a little easier this year because I feel like when the Sixers usually make major moves, it's in season. Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, James Harden, the second trade, James Harden trade to acquire him, then trading him right before the season started. All of this stuff tends to come when, you don't have a training camp to really put everything together and you haven't spent a summer thinking about it. This is pretty unique in that they have a summer to think about it and figure out how to make it work. But it does take some time. Well, time isn't necessarily on the Sixers side here. You've got a bunch of players who are older, Embiid being 30-30, Paul George being
30-30.
30 for 30. No, so I was debating whether he was 30 or 31, but I'm pretty sure he's 30. Paul George obviously being 34. You would like to really contend in the next 2 years, both because of the age, but also because then you start getting into repeater tax concerns. And I always worry about whether or not owners are going to foot like a $200 million luxury tax bill. This could get pretty crazy if they do end up hitting that repeater tax in years 3 and 4. So I just, this year can't just be a throwaway developed chemistry year.
Yes.
So because of that, I want to see how they look pretty early on. It's too much to expect them to be completely on the same page in October and November, but by December and January, I want to see some pretty darn good basketball and to feel like they are connected in ways that's probably unfair for players who are just learning how to play with each other.
And because of that midseason trade that we're going to be building up to for a while, and because of how important that early stretch is, Derek, what I want to see, what I do think comes next, there will be a real trade, like not a, hey, we flipped a few seconds for Buddy Hield, not we traded for George Hill. Like now that Joel's locked in for the 4 years ahead of you, this is your window. This is kind of last chance saloon for this era of Sixers basketball, which is crazy to be like, this is a whole era now of Joel Embiid.
Wow.
This is the year. This is the time to say we are pushing chips in and we're turning the KJ Martin contract, maybe one of these other guys to match money and, multiple first round picks. And we are getting a dude, like a guy that in game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals might come in off the bench, might start whatever, and is going to swing a game, is going to win you a game with a 5 for 8 shooting night from 3 with incredible defense on the other end of the floor. It is your time to say, we set up the team. We're going to see what the team looks like in October, November, December, and January, and we are unloading the clip. Like now is the time to go get that guy. We don't know who it'll be quite yet. We still have to see how the roster shakes out, what their actual holes are when they're all on the floor together. But as great as I think this offseason has been, now that this is set up, this is not the time for complacency and just like, hey, we're going to let the chips fall where they may, and we'll see what happens next year. And frankly, I don't think that's the mentality that this organization, certainly not that Daryl is in, because I believe now that you have Joel, Tyrese, and you got Paul George and these good role players, I would basically guarantee you that, that belief he has of you have a 5% chance to win a title, you have an obligation to push the chips in. I certainly think that they have cleared that threshold. And this is the type of year where you make a franchise-altering move on top of everything you've already done.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, look, Daryl Morey and Josh Harris didn't give KJ Martin $8 million because they're concerned about his bank account.
Yes.
And they didn't keep 4 first-round picks around to trade just to let them, draft them in 2027. They will make a move. There is almost no doubt about that.
Bogdanovich, Jordan Clarkson, whoever that name might be. Is it somebody that's younger that it didn't work in Houston? Jalen Green, where are you? What's going on? And you have the ammunition to then go out there and acquire. So for me, it's just simply just playing off what the guy said, just no more excuses, because now everything is in place. There's nothing else. There's nothing left. You got a high-powered coach who, at least by the ranking of CBS, has him number 2 of all 30 coaches in the NBA, number 2 behind only Eric Spoelstra of the Miami Heat. So you got a high-powered coach, 3 players making over $200 million on this roster, and a bunch of depth up and down this roster. There's just simply no more excuses for not advancing and getting to an Eastern Conference Finals, NBA Finals, wherever you guys sit here on September 20th. There's no more excuses for this basketball team, no more excuses for Joel Embiid, because you have everything that you could possibly ask for. Now, that is before we get to the trade deadline, and we don't know what that looks like. But for right now, at the start of the season, no more excuses for anybody in this organization for them not to get it done. And that's just it. That's where I am. No more excuses. So
there's no Tobias. There's no point guard who won't shoot.
No.
They have wing athletes. They have a good coach. They have a front office that has set them up for regular season and postseason success with the guys that are there. And now it is incumbent upon Joel, upon Paul, and Tyrese to lead this team to a title. That's anything less is like you might be able to convince yourself, like, hey, I know our guy Vince, who we've poked fun of today. He's been like, as long as they make a conference finals this year, I'm happy. Like, that's a nice thing to say, but it's not going to be good enough, right? Like, if the product of the next couple seasons is, well, they made incremental progress, nobody's going to care. It's put up or shut up time. And we can all be honest about that. They've done a great job to set it up, but now you got to roll the ball out and actually go play the games. And frankly, you got to beat teams who won. The Knicks showed how tough they're going to be.
Yep.
The Celtics just won a title after going to a previous finals and multiple conference finals before getting to that moment. You have your moment. This is the time. Go out and take it and show that you are mentally tough enough, show that you have the firepower, you have the coaching discipline and flexibility. You got to prove it. We can sit here and be like, I'm really excited for this season, right? I feel like a lot of the people in the chat,
which we are,
go out and do it.
Yep, absolutely. And how great would the story be that the Knicks build up a loaded roster, Boston loaded and ticked off for their various reasons of feeling like they're being disrespected, coming back and trying to defend their championship, and you run through both of those teams to get to the NBA Finals. How great of a story would that be for Joel Embiid and for the Sixers?
It'd be amazing
if they were able to do something like that, especially, again, everything that we've talked about with him, where the finger's pointed at him for, fair or not, reasons that he has a big hand in as far as them not advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals. A couple of super chats in here as well, as we have the 2-minute warning, which is our good buddy Al.
Well,
Al saying, I love that they are working out together already. What do you guys think? Well, this is the time. They get in early, get in about, I mean, honestly, they've been here for about 3 weeks now. Sometimes you see it's about a week and a half.
They start to trickle in. It's different year to year and team to team, but this is
It seemed like they've been here for a while. About good 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks.
And some of these guys, frankly, have been here a lot throughout the summer. Like I know Ricky's been here quite a bit when he hasn't been, you know, with Tyrese and some of these other guys.
And when they were in LA together.
Or even in Texas. I think Ricky was down there with Tyrese at some point close to Tyrese's home. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the younger guys were together most of the summer. And then this is always kind of how it works, right? Like it's not to say that the vets aren't working out in late June, early July, all that, but they tend to do it on their own. It's more of those individualized rather than going out to Rico Hines runs. End of August, early September is when everyone comes together. But yeah, I mean, to Al's point, I think it's great to see. It's just that it's like it's a new school year, basically. It's like, oh, what have you been doing over the summer? They get to see firsthand, hey, what did you add to your game? Or like if it's Tyrese, how many pounds of muscle did you put on? Like they get to see that first. And then when we get let into media day, training camp, all that, we have that same experience. And so it's always good to have this period where it really is more about the players just you're reacquainting yourselves with one another and having this time to just scrimmage and, work on those last few things before it really gets rolling.
Look at that new backpack, man. School is ready, man.
New pair of fresh white sneakers to start the school year.
Get the fresh kicks, man. Let's go.
I mean, if you have any doubt that working out together pushes people to be the best version of themselves they could possibly be. You just have to go out this door and look at that Papa Shot leaderboard. Because if Kyle Neubeck was shooting at home, he would not have a 138 right now.
No, I wouldn't, because I would have rested on my laurels, and instead I'm putting up Wilt Chamberlain numbers, trying to keep these guys below me on the leaderboard. Because, you know, I say it to them all the time. Competitiveness, and that, you know, the collective fire is what pushes people. So it's great to see those guys in the gym
and if
together.
you want to come in here and see the pros in action, we have an event with Zach where he will do a book signing. If you're a diehard member, go to allphly.com/events. You can sign up for there, buy a ticket, come get Zach's book, get his autograph, and losing Papa Shot. You can get all of that done in one night.
That's funny, man. Real Time with Prince Blue says, Adam, call him the Op, Silver, wants Joe for televised back-to-backs.
Tough break, Adam. I don't think it's the funniest one. I'm pretty sure that away Denver game is third game of 4 nights, if I remember correctly. It is going to be absolutely hysterical when Joel sits out in Denver again. And all the Nuggets fans come here to yell at me once again, and I hopefully don't get myself in as much trouble with them as I did last time, but
no promises.
Yeah. Oh man, that's going to be a problem. And that's going to be a fun one when you have to go out there and rant and tell people to, you know, relax with all of that. But no, man, it's good to have the extension in books, as Kyle mentioned, and Derek talks about earlier on the pod. We've been talking about this as a possibility for the entire summer, that this could go down, and for it to get done, lock in. Loved it again. He's in his sweats and his Skechers t-shirt, signing his extension instead of being in the suit.
I was going to say, no tux for Joel.
No
shocked.
tux,
Big
no
day.
suit.
Sweatpants,
Skechers t-shirt, and some, I don't know what kind of sneakers they were, but maybe some Vans or whatever, some Skechers.
I mean, I would hope they were Skechers.
Yeah, well, you know, even when he was with Under Armour, he still wore his Vans, man. I guess that was in the contract.
He likes his UGG slippers,
yes,
too.
He does.
Those are his favorites.
Yeah, so good to see that it is, in fact, locked in and ready to go. Next week, of course, we'll start to bring back our season preview of what this season, what we're looking for, talk about some things from players to so many other things, of course, with the season preview as we get things going for next week. It's been an eventful week. It's been a fun one. And we are now, Kyle, we're getting there, man. Five more shows
until media day, baby. And 5 more shows until Derek and I get a nice half day in the Bahamas together while you're back here working your tail off in Camden.
Media day. And one thing I always like to ask guys on media day, since Al brought up the early runs of the pickup games, who showed out? You know, who looked good first couple of days? You guys have been here a while. Who surprised you a little bit? Was it Justin Edwards? Was it Jared McCain? Did Caleb Martin show off a little bit? And those open runs, Yabusele, they're always fun.
I would bet you in an open run, Yabusele would be a problem.
Yeah.
He's somebody that would just feel like, God, this guy's annoying, man. Right. Anyone who's trying to take a little bit easy, it's just like, this MFer just coming right through my chest for an offensive rebound. Just like, not fun to play against. And I hope he brings that energy. I expect he'll bring that energy to the season.
One disappointment, Martian asks about the Bahamas. Are they really going to Bahamas? Yes, they're going to Bahamas. We'll be there.
We have been joking for the last 3 weeks. It's a real
buddy. We'll be there.
The only disappointment is that Buddy Hield is not there and we can't go to his house.
Yeah.
That's the only disappointment for the Bahamas. World famous roll call time. Let's get that going on this Friday.
What's up to Kenny coming through today?
Al. I'm just going a day later. It's all good, Al.
What's up to my girl Winona, who asked what my shirt says? It says Dead & Co. at the Sphere, baby, where the 3 of us went this summer. What up to Brian Knight? What's up to Al, the 2-minute warning?
What up, Al?
Thank you, Al, for the super chat today. Darkness is here with us. Flyers in 7 is here. Chi is here. Martian Lynch. Money Mar. I almost said darkness again. That would have been a lot of darkness for one show. Michael B. popping through, hating on my...
What up, Mike?
He said, I'm a political philosopher. I don't know what you're talking about there, Michael. We'll talk later. BC in the building.
What up, BC?
Danny C. in the building today. Phil W. saying a lot of money spent on this team. They better go get it.
A lot of money on your guy.
I agree, buddy, including for Kelly Oubre. Thank you, everyone who's been here this week. Thank you to Real Time for the super chat today.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who's been here with us. We're hoping to see you more and more. Thank you to Ash Monroe. Hoping to see you more and more. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon for notifications when we go live. Thumbs up.
See ya. Thank you, Bree.
We all silly like the mayor.